Sunday morning, jumped out of bed, put on my best suit, got in my car and raced like a jet, all the way to you. Walked in your church with heart in my hand to ask you a question, 'cause I know that you're a Calvinist friend, yeah. Can I question your doctrine without any strife? Say yes, 'cause I need to know. Say I'll never get your blessing till the day I die. Tough luck, my friend, but the answer is no. Why you gotta be so rude? Don't you know I'm Christian too? Why you gotta be so rude? I'm gonna question you anyway. Question to lip, question you anyway. Question to live, yeah, no matter what you say. Question to live, ain't what it ought to be. Why you gotta be so rude? Rude.
All right. Welcome to Sociology 101. You know when you hear the intro music that our topic is going to be on confrontational drama. And who better to really talk about controversial drama than Eric and Drew from the Provisionist podcast, right? I mean, that's y'all are really good at that, right? I mean, you're always dealing with, the abusive pastors and all kinds of this stuff you deal with all the time, isn't it? Or you have to deal with each other. That's really the experts.
That's what it is. Actually, we have a little bit of a confrontation for you, Dr. Flowers.
Is this an intervention? Is that what is it?
Yeah.
Is that what this is?
We have
y'all cloak this as, hey, we're talking about how to deal with, and y'all are confronting me now.
Yes, we have a bone to pick with you. Drew, if you'd like to explain.
Well, you see, for those of us that watched, or for those of you that watched our interview with Leighton, he shortly after our really cool rock intro, he was like, "Oh, that sounds really cool. I really like that." And then what was it, like a day or two later?
Literally,
all of a sudden, Leighton had a really cool rock intro with all this kind of
3D
and stuff in the background, and we're like, "What? That's our thing. That's our thing." And he just kind of said, "I have a minion. I have someone that can do that."
Talk to Caleb, man. Caleb's the one who's driving that train.
Caleb, if you're listening. It's really cool, though. I'm not gonna lie. It's just
I know I'm jealous.
Jealousy.
It's just
Pure
all
jealousy.
pure envy, is what that is.
Yeah, I hear it. I can. Well, y'all want to see it? Let's watch it together. Y'all want to see his cool intro?
Actually, no.
Yes, you do. Yes,
it hurts me.
You want to see? No, you want to see it. Well, let me
just twist.
Welcome to Sociology 101.
Okay,
Yeah,
that was
like that,
awesome, but that wasn't it.
That wasn't
That's
it.
true.
That wasn't the intro you're thinking of.
No,
That
it's
was
the rock
awesome.
one. It was
There's another one besides that.
There's one with like a Bible, and it says like, I don't know. Anyways,
Right.
he has so many
Which one it
intros.
was.
So many. Which one is it?
Welcome to Sociology 101.
That's
The
it.
one better? That's the one you like.
That's
You
the
like
one.
that one better than the other one? You got to tell. Caleb's watching. He needs to know which one you like the best.
Actually, I like the first one better.
Yeah,
No.
that one was good.
That's the newer one. Yeah. So yeah, Caleb's saying we're moving to rap now.
That's the next one.
Well, today we're going to be talking about disagreement among believers, because guess what? Believers, believe it or not, disagree with one another.
No.
And yeah, it happens occasionally.
Weird.
And we see it in scripture quite regularly. You see Peter and Paul, kind of going at it a little bit. You see disputes in the Jerusalem Council. You hear about disagreements. You even have passages that teach us how to have disagreements with one another. We have warning passages about not entertaining, accusations against elders without witnesses, these kinds of things. And so I wanted to have you two guys on because there is some controversy occasionally with regard to the ideas that we promote with regard to provisionism, as well as our controversial views against Calvinistic theology. And because of that, some people don't like us very much, shock and awe. But we are able, at least I think, pretty good at getting along with people who disagree with us. I think of, matter of fact, most of the Calvinists that I've engaged with over the years, I still have a good working relationship with. I would say 90% of the Calvinists that I've had on the program, or that I've interviewed, or that I've engaged with online through social media and other places in my real life, like outside of the internet world of, this whole thing, I think 100% of the Calvinists that are friends are friendly still with me, and we get along just fine. Isn't that fun? How that works. What about you guys? What's been your experience? I mean, have you burned some bridges with your whole stance against Calvinism and the provisionist perspective? Eric, you first.
Sure. I mean, I think so. That's something that tends to happen, and I don't know how much of it is my fault. I'm not sure. I'm not sure how much of it is me, or I think that would be for other people to judge. But it's certainly
Drew could be a good judge of how you treat people, pretty much.
And we do. And that's the thing. What's great about our relationship is that we hold each other to, like, we're both ENTPs. We can't not, dunk on each other if we think the other one's being ridiculous. And so we do. We hold each other to it. And, how many times have we gone like, I really want to send this. Just talk me out of it. And they're like, no, it's not a good one. It's like, fine.
And then other times we're like, I don't want to talk you out of sending this one.
I'm not going to talk you out of that one. We try to hold each other to it. And it's hard. It's hard on the internet because there's no face in front of you. Like you said, the difference between your online life and your real life. I mean,
And that's one thing I try to do that I said in our interview with Sean Cole, and I don't always succeed at this, but I try to click somebody's profile if they have a profile photo and look through a few photos. Maybe that seems creepy to some people, but to get in my head that this.
In other words, you're saying you're promoting stalking. Is that what you're saying?
Exactly.
You should stalk.
That's exactly
people.
what I'm saying. No, because I want a face so that I know, like, okay, this is a person that I'm talking to here. It helps me. So. That's what I try.
No, there's something to be said for that, because you see them not just objectified as just some moniker on the other end of the, internets, but instead you see them as a father or a husband or a child of God. You see them as, shock and awe, someone Jesus died for. You see them as someone God loves. And when you see somebody in that light, it's really it's a lot easier to treat them with the kind of love and kindness that that God has shown us, even amidst our pain and our stupidity and our stubbornness throughout our lives. Except for you, Eric, we know that hadn't been a problem for you. But,
perfect, obviously.
This is a good segue into this is why Twitter is so much more difficult, because everyone has these anonymous handles with fake names and fake profile photos and stuff. And we have a public podcast Twitter page or whatever that we use. And so people think that we're anonymous, but we're not. Like we have our faces and names up here and stuff. But it becomes real difficult to engage, and this is confession of my own, to engage charitably with someone that you don't know if that's their real name. They don't have their photo up there and stuff. But and that's kind of where all of this started, was a Twitter.
Yeah, this was a Twitter thing from the beginning. So yeah.
And I'll find myself, I don't have a hard and fast rule on the subject, because if somebody comes across as being, like their questions seem like an honest, question, well-intending kind of question, even if they have a fake, name up there, I'll often reply and engage with it sometimes if I have the time to do so. But general rule of thumb, if somebody is coming at me in any kind of a contentious way and they don't have any kind of identification for them personally, then I know immediately they have no accountability for their actions. And so it's probably not going to go well, and so it's usually my rule of thumb, if somebody's coming at me with contentious kinds of accusations online and they haven't identified themselves so that they're accountable for the words, then more than likely it's not going to be a helpful, fruitful conversation. If somebody's hiding their identity, then probably not the best conversation. Now, some people may have really good reasons for not wanting to be identified. I know, for example, my brother was on the mission field in a closed country and he had a good reason for not being identified. But that's not typical. And if it is that situation, then I would invite that person, to contact me more personally or, off of social media so that they could have, more honest conversation. But one of our, well-known interlocutors, I guess, in the Reformed world is AOMIN Ministries, Alpha and Omega Ministries, with Dr. James White. Anybody who's followed this broadcast since the beginning, back in 2014 when I began, knows that he's kind of been the nemesis for Sociology 101 in some ways. I think even in your broadcast, y'all refer to him as the one who will not be mentioned.
He has so many nicknames at this point.
Yeah, it started as he who shall not be named, and then what else has it turned into, Drew?
It's Pope of Polemics, the Sergeant of Straw Men, the Deacon of Discord, the Elder of Exegesis. We have lots of. It goes on and on.
Shame on y'all. That's horrible.
And hilarious.
The fine line.
Well, some of the things that we go back and forth on have been a direct result of what we feel obviously is a misrepresentation of our perspective, playing video clips out of context, not trying to understand the other person before you bring critique, not even interested in that person's explanation of comments, which is just bad form when you know somebody doesn't intend to say something or mean something, but yet you represent them as meaning or saying that thing, even though you know better. That's just dishonest. And some of those kinds of things we will call out. Some people allow themselves to be bullied, or they don't reply if they are being bullied or being misrepresented, and all those kinds of things. That's not been my MO. I've never been that kind of a person to be able to just quietly take the abuse. Michael Brown is better at that than I am. I respect him in his work, but there have been many times when I've heard things said about him, that he just doesn't engage with or didn't reply to, when it would have made me pretty frustrated if somebody was publicly broadcasting and saying things that I've heard people say about him, and he just choose not to reply. And there's been times when I wish I had the disposition just to do that, to just say, you know what, I'm going to let God defend me, so to speak. I'm just going to let the chips fall where they may. I'm not going to reply to that blatant mischaracterization that was just seen by thousands of people and now being propagated everywhere on internet. I'm just not going to say anything about it. I wish I had that kind of discipline. I don't. I mean, I feel like I have to say something if somebody's misrepresenting, not just me. Really, there's a sense in which it's not just about misrepresenting me. It's about misrepresenting a perspective that I hold to, because I see how easy it is. We see what's happened with Pelagius, for example. You see what's happened with any person who has stood against Calvinism over the decades and the centuries. Their doctrines are so woefully misaligned and horribly depicted as to be completely unrecognizable from what the actual source material says. And I see it happening in real time with my actual words and teachings. And I can't help but feel for the guys who have gone before me, who, like the Anabaptists, were burned at the stake and thrown into the Dunby River for disagreeing with the Reformed of their day. and praise God they can't still do that, and because I'm afraid that some of them might not of course my friends and the good brotherly Calvinists that we all know and love, but some of them I feel like very well would gladly throw me into the river with a millstone tied around my neck, and if not that, at least completely misalign and misrepresent my perspective and make it sound the most, in the most horrible light as possible.
And that's how this started, right? It was my journey with that was when this, years ago, the debate, and then all the fallout from the debate. And then this thing kept this I'm going to call it what it is. This lie kept getting repeated over and over again. And at first I kind of engaged with it like, well, why do you think that? And well, isn't it true that this? And
well, let's back up for a second.
Okay.
Eric, not everybody knows maybe all the history of this. Some people obviously who followed the podcast for a while and know back and forth. They're very well aware of the common refrain from the Alpha and Omega ministry guys. But what tell a little bit from your perspective, what you're talking about. What lie are you talking about?
Well, it was the lie that was perpetrated at the debate and then in the broadcast since, and now every single day since, is that you didn't debate Romans 9. Leighton didn't debate Romans 9. Leighton didn't debate Romans 9. And he didn't talk about Romans 9. He didn't debate Romans 9. And it's, at first I tried to engage with it. Like, why do you think that? Here's the evidence. Look, here's the video. It was, the broadcast.
Here's the PowerPoint slides with
here's the PowerPoint
verses
slides
from Romans 9 on the screen that he was reading from. They're right here.
It's crazy, man.
Go ahead.
It's so crazy. And then, but now, 5-6 years later, whatever it is, coming up in 6 years, I think. Now I just go, that's a lie. And Caleb, I think, did that short, the 10-minute short recently. And so this is how this came out again, right? So he releases this short. People start going like, well, wait a minute, is this stuff true? And then and then somebody, I think they're a fan of ours. I don't know if they're provisionists or they're a fan of Sociology 101 or what they are. They seem kind of neutral, like, hey, I wish these things would get cleaned up. And somebody was responding back and saying, oh no, he didn't debate Romans 9. And so I just go, that's a lie. And here's the 10-minute clip. I just left it at that.
Right. Yeah.
And then out of the blue, he wasn't in it at all. The James White wasn't in it. AOMIN wasn't in it. AOMIN Ministries, Alpha and Omega Ministries, pops in into the thread. So somebody.
Well, here, let's just until you finish talking about it. Let me put this. That was the video there. Let me put this in here. Is that Drew? Drew, is that you, the provisionist perspective, or is that Eric, or both of you?
I think that's Eric's comment there.
We run it, rerun it, and so sometimes we get confused who's doing it.
Both of you are okay.
That's me.
All right,
that's me.
So you write. I bet if my brother James, if I met Brother James in person, he would be laid back, kind person to have coffee with. I'm sure he's a loving husband and a devoted father and a loyal friend. So you're saying nice things. You're saying I bet if we were in person, we would probably get along just fine. And I agree. I think James seems like the kind of guy, when I've seen him hanging out with Jeff Durbin and all those other guys on videos, and when they do stuff online, he rides bikes and does all. He seems like just a regular, pretty nice guy that you would probably get along with just fine. Even in the back room kind of stuff, when we talked and met there at the debate, very cordial. It's not like he's got fire coming out of his eyes and he's Beelzebub or something like people try to paint him as online. And by the way, for those that question his credibility for his credentials and all that kind of stuff, I've never engaged in any of that, and I've always rebuked people for doing it. He's obviously an accomplished scholar, has written I don't know how many freaking books, and he's obviously very accomplished. I don't know why people would try to take that approach for James White, and I've always defended his work in apologetics and every other field. I just disagree with him about soteriology. It's really that simple for me, at least. But so you're just saying a nice thing that you're kind of pushing back and saying, hey, I'm sure James and I would get along just fine if we were in person and it wasn't through social media, which is a good point. And then some guy, literally, that's his name, some guy.
This is the guy who I was thinking of.
I didn't notice that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just some guy. That's his name. Pretty sure that's why he would never come on Leighton's or any provisionist channel. It's a situation where he'd be forced to be cordial and humanize his opponent, which would be bad for his brand. He'd have to lose his detached air of superiority in that context. And I mean, I see where he's coming from. He won't come on my program. I don't understand why he won't just have a conversation with me on my program. Ever since the debate, that's been an open invitation. And I've even said, I'll come on your program if you think that I'm going to try to trick you or something like that. You can host it. I just want to have a discussion to discuss when I'm being accused of doing something dishonest, like baiting and switching on the debate topic. It seems like you'd at least maybe talk to me about it, before making a public accusation of dishonesty. I mean, that just seems like
far too rational.
Yeah. And so as soon as that critique was leveled against me after the debate, from that point forward, I immediately began to reach out and say, let's talk. Let's discuss this, because I don't know what you're thinking that makes you think that I baited and switched you. But obviously that is what you've come to the conclusion. James and Rich Pierce came to the conclusion that I agreed to debate Romans 9. And by debate Romans 9, they mean that I agreed to give a full exegetical commentary of Romans chapter 9 in my opener, my 20-minute opener. And since I didn't do that to their liking, that I baited and switched them and tried to interject total inability instead, because I originally did want to debate total inability. As many of you know, I think that's the crux of the entire debate. Because I talked about total inability and I confronted that presupposition of total inability brought into Romans 9, they just assumed that I hijacked the debate, that I refused to debate Romans 9, and therefore I was dishonest. And it was a nefarious intent. Is that pretty fair to kind of?
That was exactly his point.
Okay, yeah. That's what we've been pushing back on ever since, just to say, well, listen, okay, real quick, and I know people have heard this, but they've gone through the back and forth, but Romans 9, if you're talking about judicial hardening, the Israelites who are not believing in their own Messiah, that's what Romans 9 is about. It's like, as God's promise failed, Israel, for the most part, aren't believing in their own Messiah. They're not believing in Jesus. Why aren't they believing in Jesus? Is it because they're totally depraved from birth and God didn't want them? Or is it because they have grown calloused and hardened in their rebellion, and now God's cutting them off and using them in that rebellion to bring about redemption for the world? It's one of those two things. I was arguing for the latter, which means I'm undercutting the concept of total inability. We're not born hated by God for no apparent reason and cut off. Nobody's born hated for no apparent reason and cut off in reprobation. That's not in the Bible. That's attacking total inability, which is a presupposition Calvinists bring to Romans 9. And I was attacking that and injecting and helping people to understand what judicial hardening looks like, which is God taking someone who's already hardened in their rebellion and in their unbelief and cutting them off in their unbelief, as Romans 11:23 says. They're not cut off for no apparent reason. They're cut off for their unbelief. And they may be grafted back in if they leave that unbelief, in fact. And using them in their rebellious behavior and their actions to bring about the purpose of redemption and the ingrafting of the Gentiles. Now, that to me seems all about what Romans 9 through 11 is. And yet I'm being accused of hijacking it and talking about something that's not has anything to do with Romans 9 simply because I'm attacking the presupposition of total inability. I don't see how that's not related. I don't see how total inability is not related to understanding what Romans 9 means. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I mean, especially the hardening bit. I think that's been one of our main refrains, and one of your main refrains is how and why do you blind somebody already blinded from birth, and how and why do you harden somebody who's already hardened from birth? And so you addressing that issue, which is in Romans 9, that talks about Pharaoh and all of that, is I don't see how that's not part of the discussion. So.
Warren McGrew says, at least you got a debate with White. He's been challenging White. For those that don't know, idol killer Warren McGrew has been challenging James White to a debate on total inability, and he's been sloughed off. Don't do it on total inability. Warren, if you'll challenge him to a debate and you tell him you will use only a Greek text, that you won't have any notes, and that you will debate only the verses that he chooses, then he'll say yes. I'm sure of it.
I want to challenge him to debate in Spanish. I think we should do that.
And then when he doesn't, call him chicken.
That's right.
That's why you don't disagree with believers, by the way, is challenging them to a debate in an area that they're not strong in. That makes you sound petty, because why would I want to debate somebody who doesn't speak Spanish and make them speak Spanish? I would be giving myself a really big advantage. It doesn't make a lot of sense. Anyway, it goes on, and Pink Noise there is posting the debate, which is fine. I like for people to watch the debate. Then maybe they'll begin to see the actual representation of what happened. And then some guy says, I know there was a debate. I also know that Dr. White claims that there was no contest because of a misunderstanding on the scope of the debate, but refuses to do another one to correct it, which I find disappointing because I would love to see it. And I think that's a general sentiment that I hear from a lot of people. They'd love to hear just a back and forth discussion. Okay, you felt like we didn't engage very well with the debate, the topic. So why don't y'all have a follow-up discussion without all the restrictions of a formal debate? Just talk about it. Talk about why you felt like Leighton didn't engage with the actual topic very well. And maybe Leighton could explain why he believes he did engage with the topic very well. And y'all could talk about that like real people do. I don't know what's difficult about that.
And I think
this is when you guys jump in. Go ahead.
If I can add, just from the some guys perspective, I think that my introduction to you, Leighton, was this Romans 9 debate. And from a Christian normie's perspective, I essentially had the same view that you did through reading some other stuff. And then I watched the debate and I was like, oh, wow, like he's essentially saying a lot of the same stuff that I would say. And then you get to the cross-examination and all that stuff, and it's just like, nah. It's so frustrating from our perspective, because you want to see both sides deal with the actual points of contention so that you can walk away. Because I reckon if you're on the fence and trying to decide between the two and you watch a debate like that, then you're just like, well, he didn't actually respond. Like, we don't even get to hear what he has to say to this, because he's in his brain, he's switching topics. Therefore, this
okay.
is
So here's Pink Noise is representing himself here. He says, the debate was very good. I don't feel the need for another debate. It seems only provisionists want a rematch. I wonder why. What do you say to that?
Because he did not respond to anything that you said. Why would we not want?
Well, even you got to make one argument or the other, guys. You can't say Leighton refused to engage in the debate and then say it was a great debate. You can't have your cake. You can't have both ways. Either Leighton didn't engage in Romans 9 and didn't hit the debate topic right, and so there needs to be a rematch to actually hit the points of contention. Either that's your argument, or you need to say no, Leighton engaged in the debate and James White just stomped him on the actual points of contention. It's one or the other. And so that seems to be arguing, oh, Leighton did engage, but he just got stomped. He just got beat in engaging that debate. But that's not been the case. James White, go back to listen to his rebuttal. He says, well, guys, I would like to have a rebuttal, but I don't have anything to rebut because Leighton didn't, quote unquote, exegete the text. And so he doesn't engage with any of those points that I just made about who the interlocutor is. He didn't engage with any of the points about judicial hardening versus total inability. He didn't engage in any of those points that I raised in my opener. He just said, I don't have to because no exegesis, as per what he believed is our agreement. And so why not then come back and say, well, here are these arguments, here are these points. Why not engage with those points? Why not answer those arguments? After all, Emilio Ramos, who is a Calvinist who hosted the debate, did a podcast a week later, and he actually came right out and said, I'm not going to say that Leighton didn't argue Romans 9. I'm going to say that and Sean Cole said the same thing. I'm going to actually hit on the points that he brought up. And then they went and started arguing against my actual points, which I responded to at the time. But at least they actually engaged with my points of contention. At least they actually answered my arguments. And James White never afforded me that courtesy. And that's why we push back on it. And that's why we'd like to have, further discussion, because we'd like to hear how James White would answer those arguments. But you guys jump in. He says, there was no misunderstanding. It's a documented lie. Dr. Flowers has text messages from, it says, Rich Pierce and White block anyone, including loyal listeners, who ask questions about these texts and have done so across Twitter and Facebook since the debate. Now, the only thing that may not be true about that, well, they have blocked people on Twitter. They blocked me on Twitter at one time and then unblocked me later. But where I got blocked was from the AOMIN Facebook page.
Yeah,
where
I'm referring to on. I know you got blocked. I don't think I've ever engaged on their Facebook page, so I don't think I'm blocked. I'm referring to an actual exchange I had with Rich. I think at some point last year, and where I brought up these text messages and brought up these screenshots, and he blocked me and other Calvinist listeners who asked about these text messages.
Yeah, and why would you do that? I mean, if you have a threat, I mean, if they're just randomly posting on your social media page, I can understand maybe blocking somebody who does that. But if you're engaging with Leighton didn't do what we agreed to do. Oh, here's the agreement. Let's block that text message agreement and ban the person who blocked it. That obviously doesn't look good for you.
No, it doesn't.
I think White and Rich probably know that. I think they have to know if you're deleting the text message agreement back and forth with the person who's coordinating the debate, and you're not allowed to put those up on your website in order to bring clarity to the situation, then obviously something's wrong. And again, that's not how you treat other believers. That's not how you should treat them. You should treat them with not automatically assuming nefarious intent upon them because they disagree with you, which is exactly the way I feel like I've been treated by both Rich and James White, is just automatically, I must have a nefarious intention if, I'm a non-Calvinist, but then I see how he treats people like Michael Brown, and I think, okay, well, he's a non-Calvinist. Why does he treat Michael Brown with cordiality and respect? Because he's a non-Calvinist and he practices the same hermeneutical principles I do with regard to Romans 9. So it can't be that just because you believe differently than James White on sociology, that all of a sudden you earn a place of disrespect and, vile. I mean, what do you think, Eric? I can tell you're pondering that point.
Well, okay. So then what happens here? So let's because we're showing the background here of how you and I both got on the phone with Rich Pierce at separate times.
Yeah. And that happened both today. I talked with Rich Pierce for 45 minutes today. And Eric, you talked to him yesterday for 45 minutes on the phone. Is that about right? Or was it today or yesterday or day before?
I think it was yesterday, wasn't it?
No. It
was on your Good Friday.
It was Friday. It was Friday.
Okay, on Friday. Well, the way it came about is this tweet stream here, where you guys put up the debate that 10-minute short that explains the agreement of the debate, and then Alpha and Omega Ministries, which is Rich Pierce, there, he says, I have no personal Twitter account. I haven't had since July. This account has no blocks and no mutes. And so that seems to be his rebuttal for this statement that
right, which we weren't saying.
Ask questions.
That's a half truth,
right.
Which makes it sound like we're not telling the truth. But
right, yeah. Because he did block us on Facebook, and James White did block some people on his Twitter account who posted these things.
Just not this account.
But this particular account, Alpha and Omega Ministry blog feed, he
Nothing
didn't block you on this account.
Nothing to see here.
So anyone who's interested in the facts isn't going to find them on Twitter. If you're interested in the truth, you can call me and I will explain. He puts up his phone number. Okay. So that's from Rich. In the provisionist perspective, I guess that's Eric again, says, I noticed that you did not dispute any of my claims above, which non-existent Twitter fact was I wrong about specifically? Or what does Leighton have wrong in that short video linked? In other words, what specifics did I misrepresent, or did I get my information wrong? I think that's a good question. And then he replies, I am pretty sure that I did and do. I am not interested in playing your merry-go-round. Okay.
What? He's just asking a question. I don't understand. This was so frustrating to watch, to be like, what merry-go-round are you talking about? Just answer the question. It's so frustrating.
Well, oftentimes you divert when you don't have a good argument or a good answer. You divert. You try to get people off the topic, and because it doesn't. You're
and at some point,
on the carpet for something.
And at some point, I think I might be getting this exchange mixed up with another Calvinist on the subject, but at some point, I might have jumped in and been like, "You're deflecting," like, "Hello." But anyways, we'll carry on.
Yeah. So even if, and you guys write back, you said, even if asking for clarification or refutation of claims on social media is a merry-go-round, you're just changing the ride to give me a call and suggesting no truth seekers will do so. You're not above the game, you're playing it. And then he replies saying, not at all. I despise Twitter, but have to monitor this account as a part of my job. I find this platform to be nothing more than a free-for-all food fight. He has a point there. Twitter.
He's right about that. I agree with that.
Yeah, Twitter can be a problem, which is one of the reasons I've said, hey, let's talk, James White. Come on the program. Let's have a talk. That's one of the reasons I say, let's not go to Twitter. Let's talk. I mean, I just want the talk to be public because this is a public dispute. That's been the only difference, is that at least with this, with Rich, he didn't want it to be a public dispute, to have a public conversation, but it is a public dispute and it's a public accusation. So I think it's only right to have a public discourse in order to overcome that problem personally. And then I reply back and I say, Rich, this is Leighton. I'm just learning about your offer to have a conversation by phone. To avoid the he said back and forth, I'd love to call you on the program and talk this out like brothers publicly, since this has been a public dispute. Would that be okay with you? ? And then he replies, he says, I repeat what I told you years ago. You are welcome to call me and I will do my best to answer any questions that you have. So today I called him on the program. I didn't do it live because I didn't want to surprise him with a live broadcast, but I was recording and I called him for the program, just like I said I was. And immediately he says, if you're recording, you better stop the recording. I'm not gonna have a conversation. I'm not gonna be on your program. And I said, oh, I'm sorry. On the Twitter feed, you seem to indicate in your response that would be okay to call you for a public conversation. And he said, no, I don't want this recorded. I'm not on the program. I said, okay. And so I stopped it. And then we just talked for 45 minutes, just he and I. And just as Eric did, Eric and he talked as well a couple of days before. And so that conversation happened. And by the way, before I called him, I said, I don't recall being told to call you concerning this issue. Instead, what I recall is being banned from AOMIN social media pages where I posted our text discussions. That's what I still remember. I'm still blocked from their Facebook page. I don't think I'm blocked from his Twitter account anymore. He took off that block for whatever reason. And
You're
then
good content.
Yeah, I guess so. With that said, I will gladly have a conversation with you on this topic. Is there a time you would prefer that I call? And then that's when I set up a time to call him back today. So that's what I did. There was some other back and forth. He also posted this. I think it was in replies to you guys as well.
So wait. So what is the timestamp of? So go back real quick to the other one, and his first. What's the timestamp for his first? Say, hey, here's my phone number. Right. When was that?
Like for me, you mean, or for like way?
Yeah. Just up. Hey, call me. So
right
okay.
Here?
So
April 1st. April 1st.
Doesn't
April
say
1.
the time, unfortunately.
It's April
Actually,
Fool's.
you have to click it. If you
there
click
it is.
it'll show the time.
3:32. Okay, so 3:32 p.m. So now, so go to that second one again.
Okay.
Your other tab there.
There. 3:32. 3:43.
No, the other tab on your browser that you switched to. The other tweet you showed.
Yeah.
That you. Okay. And so then what time? Oh, like an hour and 10 minutes later.
Oh, 4:49. Yeah.
So he's already taking kind of like a dunk on us, right? Like only truth seekers will call me. It's been an hour. No one's called me. Nobody wants the truth. And it's like as if we can just call him. It's kind of this. And I was working.
Wait. I got a Pink Point Noise is saying that Rich never said he wanted a public combo. I didn't say that Rich wanted a public combo. I said I wanted a public combo. I wanted a public conversation, and Rich said, I'll tell you what I said before, call me, and I would be glad to answer any questions. He didn't say I didn't want a public conversation, so I just assumed that he was okay with it when I called him. As soon as he told me he wasn't okay with it, I stopped the recording. So I'm not sure why you're Pink Noise. I'm sorry, I'm going to have to block you, brother. He doesn't have his real name up there, and he's always posting
and
stuff
he is actually a she.
Oh, she needs Jesus. I'm sorry, but that individual, whoever it is, she has not put her information out there. And she has said some things and done some things online that make me really truly question.
Well, this is, and some of this,
lot.
all started with us having friendly little chats, right? You're gonna get it for this, Leighton. You're having a friendly little chat with me. This is this is bad news.
Gosh, yes. And that's why one of the reasons that she's being blocked is that because I've had Idol Killer, Warren McGrew, and you and others on the program, that I am promoting everything that you ever taught and believed, even though I may not agree with everything you've ever taught and believed. It's just ridiculous that people that are that kind of divisive in their ways, you can't engage with them very long. Otherwise you end up in the mud with them, and it's just better to move on. So
on this point, and you may get to this, I'm in here with my personal account at some point, and I told Rich, I was like, I cannot call you. I live in New Zealand. Can we not DM about this? And he just, he's like, well, you just can't, it's not my problem that you can't figure out a way. I was like, I literally cannot call you. I live in New Zealand.
No.
There's some other way we can correspond.
Well,
so he was holding me responsible for something that I was unable to do.
Oh. I was like, that's just the MO for Calvinism, isn't it? I mean, that's just what you
makes sense to him, right? It makes sense to him.
Well, you become like God, you become like the God you worship. And so if God's going to hold us accountable for things we can't do, then he might as well hold you accountable for things you can't do.
That's right. Some guy gets credit for pointing that out, by the way. That wasn't me. Some guy chimed in after my interaction with him, was like, wait, are you holding him responsible for something he can't do? What
does that remind me of? Okay, well, anyway, even though he's saying he doesn't want to get on the merry-go-round and he's not going to get into this without a phone call, an hour and a half later, or less than an hour and a half later, he posts this, which is an email from me. I don't know when it is. I'm not sure exactly when it is, if it's before the debate or maybe our back and forth after debate. I don't know. But this is his proof that the agreement was to exegete the entire chapter of Romans chapter 9. This is his proof of that. So I wrote, apparently, I proposed debating total inability, which I was told you did not want to debate at the point. Let's back up 1 second. Actually, he contacted me. I did not contact him first. He contacted me first, despite the way sometimes it is portrayed. He had been challenging David Allen for years, I think. David Allen has no desire to debate James White for whatever reason. He can state that for himself. He's coming to Dallas, and he wants to debate David Allen on atonement. David Allen never accepts, just kind of ignores his request over and over again. So he contacts me, and he says, would you be willing to debate the atonement in Dallas on this particular dates? I said, no, I don't want to debate atonement because I don't believe that's our biggest point of contention. I believe Calvinists can give or take the point of atonement, and it doesn't matter. So I don't want to debate that point. I said, I'd be happy to debate the T, though. If you don't want to debate the L, I'd be glad to debate T, because that's the whole foundation of your system, and it all crumbles apart when we just look at the T. And he says, no, I don't want to debate the T. Now, why is that? Why is he unwilling to engage with Warren McGrew, who doesn't even have, I mean, nothing against you, Warren, you could earn a degree very easily. You're very intelligent, but he is not Warren would be, in James's eyes, Warren would be sitting duck because he's not a seminary graduate. What I suspect happens, and again, I may be wrong, is that when he watched Warren McGrew walk all over Matt Slick, and I know it sounds bad, but that's just true. When you watch,
that's just what happened.
It was a thrashing.
Warren just picked him apart piece by piece, very intelligently and very calmly. I was very impressed with Warren. It's one of the reasons I had him on the program a couple of times afterwards, because Warren just picked Matt Slick apart. I really think James White saw that and goes, I don't want to have a piece of that. I don't want to have anything to do with that. I honestly think that would happen. Why do I think that would happen? Because it's exactly what happened when I see Chris Date debate on annihilationism. And whenever he calls me up and says, hey, do you want to debate me on annihilationism? I go, no, thank you. There's a static in the line. I don't think
And with respect,
annihilationism, Chris Date.
Yeah, no doubt. Nobody wants to
and everybody, oh, so are you scared of him? Yeah, I'm scared. I'm scared of Chris Date. I'm scared to debate him on Calvinism, to be honest with you, because he's a really strong debater. But I'm especially scared to debate Chris Date on his bailiwick. on annihilationism, and I refuse to do so because I'm scared of him. I'm just not so prideful enough that I can't admit that. I'm scared of somebody. I just come out and say, yeah, I'm scared of that person. I don't want to debate him. But I just have to assume that that's the case because he will not debate total inability. I have no idea why he wouldn't want to debate that topic unless he thinks it's a weak point. I don't know.
Yeah. And with respect to that whole situation, I don't know how to say this. This may come off unpolitely or whatever, but Brother James, his narrative with the Warren McGrew situation has been, I'm not engaging with you because you're just trolling to gain followers. You just want to use me to gain followers. And I retweeted him saying this one time. And I don't know how to say this nicely. I just said, don't flatter yourself. Warren McGrew was doing just fine, gaining heaps and heaps of subscribes and views and stuff, is averaging around 1,000 views per episode. We're jealous, not going to lie. So it's like, I won't debate you because if I do, I'll be like enabling your heresy and all this other stuff. And so it's like,
I'm giving you a platform. Well,
exactly.
The problem with the irresistible truth, Derek, who's a Calvinistic friend of ours, I've interviewed with Derek too. He's one of the guys that we've talked to and interviewed with. So Derek, he says, I think James just thinks he's in the big leagues in a ton of debates, and he doesn't want to debate lower level guys like McGrew. That may be the case. I grant you that. That could be.
You mean like
motivation.
John Cranman? You mean like John Cranman on Unbelievable?
But that's
with
my
Romans
point.
9.
What about Steve Anderson? What about the guy in California? I can't think of his name. I mean, there are, I can of the 175 debates you've had, how many of them have lesser credentials than Warren McGrew, and how many of them have lesser debate capacity and skills? That's the issue. I think Warren McGrew, though his credentials aren't there, his skill set is seen, because if you think about it, you to lose to a guy who has a PhD in a field, you can kind of get away with that. If I debate a guy who's debated 175 times and he's got a PhD in the field or whatever else, I kind of expect it. I'm not going to be expected to win that game. But if I lose against a realtor or a contractor who doesn't even have a seminary degree, and it very possibly could happen if I debate the weakest point of Calvinism, i.e. the T, against someone who's very intelligent and a very good debater, who's calm, cool, and collected like Warren McGrew, I can understand why he wouldn't take that debate. If I were him, I would not take that debate.
And he's not taking it.
I don't think he'll take it. Just like the whole thing with Dr. Wilson, Ken Wilson.
Oh,
I mean, I don't know why that hadn't happened yet. I mean, usually it's AOMIN, who's the professionals in debate, that take a challenge like that and run with it and get it coordinated. And I don't know, maybe COVID is still preventing that. I don't know. Yeah. But I
I was just in Arizona. Arizona's wide open. You can do anything you want in Arizona.
Yeah. Plus with internet stuff, it's almost like funner and better debate.
Yeah. But I think to Derek's point about the big leagues. So I give him a call. Okay. He's 2 hours behind. So he's still there when I get off at work at 5. He's still there.
You're talking about calling Rich.
I called Rich.
Okay.
I didn't plug in my computer. My computer's going to die. This is like, live stream.
Well, as soon as Drew and I start rambling on and on, you can go get your charger, I guess, right?
I think it's like right here. Well, anyway, so I give him a call, and that's the way it is. Like, it's true that he believes that the narrative is, well, when you sign up for a debate, it's your choice how you do the debate, but you have to fulfill the parameters of the debate. We're not going to tell you the parameters of the debate, so that when you show those text messages of Emilio Ramos, he's going, so what? You can say however you want to do it. You have to fill the parameters of the debate. And since you didn't, and you tried to smuggle in tonality, that makes you dishonest. You're not a man of your word, and you're dishonest. And so that is how they see it. They see themselves as a successful, professional apologetics debate organization. This is what they do professionally. They're very good at it. And there's this, I'm going to call it what it is. There's this level of, when you talk to him, there's this level of hubris there, which is we know what we're doing. We know how to do it. Our perceptions of other people and our perceptions of how things go is 100% unassailable. When we say this is how it was, that's how it was, and there's just no other way around it. And when we have a perception of somebody else's motives or intents, that is 100% pure as the driven snow. We know exactly what Leighton was trying to do, and there's no other way around it. That is how they see themselves. That's true.
Well, and plus, if this statement, taking on specific passages, I suggested John 6, but was told he preferred Romans 9, and I agreed to Romans 9. If that's supposed to mean that I am agreeing to going verse by verse exegetically through Romans 9, then I don't know where that comes from, especially given the text to Emilio Romas when I told him how hermeneutically I would approach the debate. So I don't know how you could pretend like or even think that that's the way that I would do it, especially given the fact that we only have 20 minutes. And also given the fact that James White didn't cover the last 6 verses, which is Paul's own summary and commentary of the argument he's just made in Romans 9. It seems like the most important part, which is where I started. Why? Because it tells us exactly what Paul's intention is with regard to faith versus works, not monergism versus synergism. And once you know that that's where he's going, it's easy to follow his line of argument all the way through Romans 9, in my opinion. So I think the last 6 verses are some of the most important verses, and he never even touched on them. So he didn't even fulfill the demand that he thinks was the demand of the debate, which is to exegete the entire chapter of Romans 9. Exegesis is line by line, verse by verse. Hermeneutics always starts with knowing who the author is, knowing the context, historical context of the book, knowing what's happening. And I think it's very important to understand the hardening of Israel and the ingrafting of the Gentiles in order to understand the context of Romans 9 through 11. How in the world can you possibly engage with Romans 9 through 11 without understanding the hardening process of Israel and the grafting of the Gentiles? I mean, that's what it's about. So I don't know. That gets a little bit frustrating, as you can imagine, that somehow that's not about Romans 9, just simply because it's not an exegetical commentary of verse 1, verse 2, verse 3 in order or something like that.
And anyway. Eric and I have a little bit of a running joke that you can tell that a person is a Calvinist when they're teaching through Ephesians 1 or when they're teaching through Romans 9, if they start teaching Ephesians in verse 3 and don't go through 1 and 2. And if they stop teaching Romans 9 at verse, I think it's 22 or 23 or so, they stop. And that's finished. Even John Piper's exegetical commentary on Romans 9 is like verses 1 to 22 or 23. It's like, what? Does the end of Romans 9 not exist? It's like that, what is this? The end of Romans 9 is the Achilles heel.
And when I bring up the end of Romans 9, then I'm accused of reading the text backwards. Oh, you're starting at the end instead of the beginning. Well, James, you left off there. You didn't.
He didn't even talk about it.
I had to bring it in there because you didn't even talk about it. You didn't even mention it. And he gives a summary. He even says, "What shall we say to these things?" That's a pretty big comment about what the chapter's actually about.
And God forbid we go to like Romans 11, just 2 chapters later, to gain some more context about hardening. Oh, you're running off to a Romans 11. Oh, it's the debate on Romans 9. I just don't understand that thinking. I just don't understand.
Well, and then and if it's a debate and the debate structure, professional debate organization putting on a debate, and the debate structure is intro, rebuttal, and your guy goes, "I'm not going to rebut anything this guy just said." Now you're violating the debate. And so we could have said the same thing. We could have been saying this for the last 5-6 years. James White didn't debate Romans 9 because he didn't rebut anything that I said. Well, we could have played that game too, with the letter of the law of how you do debates or professional debate organization or whatever. And it's just, is that how we're supposed to disagree with each other? We're supposed to hold each other to the letter of the law. It would have been totally fine. And I said this to Rich. I said this, it would have been totally fine if James White, none of us would have a problem. We wouldn't still be talking about this. If James White, we went, you know what? Leighton's approach is faulty because of this. And here's what he said, and here's where he's wrong. And he actually did that in his rebuttal, but he didn't.
Right.
So that's why and then what it was afterwards, it wasn't just, Leighton's debate approach was wrong, and here's why, and his reading of Romans is wrong, and here's why. It was Leighton didn't debate Romans. That's what keeps being said over and over and over again.
Yeah.
And so is that how we're supposed to disagree with each other?
Yeah, I mean, that's a really good point. Go ahead, Drew.
I was just going to say this method is foolproof. Right? Like, let's say you debated the Trinity, and
Drew, we're losing you, brother. You're kind of cutting out on us. So you froze up on us, and we're not hearing you. So just real quick, one other little thread of this, where Alpha and Omega Ministries is going back and forth, and he says Rich had nothing to do with this. Is Rich talking? Rich had nothing to do with the format or the topic. I know this to be a fact. You guys take such narratives to be truths, and sit here on Twitter and gossip, and you know nothing. And then Kevin Christ, I guess, I think he's a Calvinist based upon what he said elsewhere, but he says, I apologize, Rich. I asked for your forgiveness. I was going by memory and thought you had said in your critique that Flowers did not follow the debate format that was decided beforehand, and that he hijacked the debate. I was wrong. But yeah, it is time to let this issue go. And Alpha and Omega Rich says, oh, I did say that in my critique. So in other words, that you shouldn't apologize for that. I did say that in my critique, but I played no part in negotiating the format or the topic ahead of time, Rich. And then he goes on to say, here's the problem. It has been reported to me that this is being bantied around by a man who can't seem to let his work stand on its own. Instead, it just keeps getting rehashed over and over. To what end? James has said his piece on the matter, and so have I. Think about it. And then I reply and I say, Rich, I believe my work does stand on its own, but every time White or his followers recount this debate, they repeat the same misinformation, which was demonstrated to be false here, which has been replayed by others as well. And so my point, because I was brought in on this, I mean, I didn't start this discussion, but I was brought in on the discussion, tagged in on the discussion, is the whole thing is, why are you, Leighton, continually rehashing this? Why are you continually bringing this up as if I'm the one always initiating these comments or these Twitter exchanges or these broadcasts or these things? And that was part of my discussion with Rich, that he seemed a little bit surprised about whenever he kept saying, you're the one who keeps bringing up White. You're the one who keeps, and I told him, I said, it's been over 2.5 years and there's only one exception to this. And I named that exception in the broadcast when I started it. I have not engaged with James White until James White has brought me or provisionism itself up in his broadcast. In other words, I have responded to his rebukes, to his critiques of us. I have not initiated a critique against James White for over 2.5 years. Back when I did that video saying, I love James White, appreciate him, thank you, kind of a conciliatory, kind of a little 10-minute clip about James White, just saying, peace be with you, go do your thing, and I'm going to leave you alone now. And then I committed. I was not going to bring James White up again unless he brought me up again, unless he started critiquing us. And I've held to that, except for one exception of one video that he did probably about 3 or 4 months ago, I guess it was, where it was a specific, critique against another Armenian group that I felt like I should have responded to, even though it wasn't me personally. But besides that, I've not been the one who's been bringing up James White. I've been the one replying to James White's critique of me over and over again.
And their whole one of their parts of their whole narrative was that, and it was, I just want to premise this. I want to say something first. I want to say this at the beginning, but I forgot. Dr. Flowers, did you know that I was going to call Rich?
No.
Did we have a conversation about it?
I didn't even know that was happening until after the fact. Yeah.
Great. So then Rich and I have a good 45-minute conversation. It wasn't contentious. I mean, it's contentious because we disagree, we have different perspectives, but it was cordial, and he even
as was my conversation with him.
Right, sure. So it was cordial. But and it was fascinating to me, and I found it valuable. It was fascinating to me for me to understand their perspective and to understand how they see things. And what is amazing to me is how blinded they are to their own. They do the same stuff you do, and then call it one thing when it's you and call it another thing when it's
double standard.
So there's another where if you want to have him on your broadcast, you're a publicity hound is the word he used, right? Publicity hound.
Yeah, like when Warren challenging him to debate, Warren's just trying to steal his followers.
Right.
It can't be that Warren has the same motive that James has when he challenges William Lane Craig to debate. That can't be the case.
Can't be it.
Can't be the same motivation that he has whenever he critiques Tim Keller or Rick Warren or any of these other bigger name guys. He's doing so. Why? Because he believes what he says is true, and he believes that he's critiquing an error in those other theologians. Yeah. It couldn't be that Warren or myself or other lower or lesser known scholars, lesser known debaters, lesser known apologists have the same intention that he has when he does the same exact thing. It must be you have a bad intention when you do the same thing that I am doing for a good intention. And I know this because I can read minds, I can read intentions, I can read hearts. God whispers it in my ear. I don't know. I don't know how he.
Yeah, when an anonymous account like Matt Estes, I don't think that's his real name. When an anonymous account like Pink Noise sends James White a clip, he spends half a Radio Free Geneva on it, and he sends you. He gets sent a clip, and he's on it. He can't keep the name Flowers out of his mouth, and that's fine if he would extend people the same courtesy. That would be fine. Is if when other people do it, he's, oh, you're just trying to gain an audience. You're just trying to, and there are times when that him or Matt Estes and some of these people will say the quiet part out loud, where how they view this is about a brand, and this is about how things look and keeping an audience and not creating, your adversaries and not giving them a platform or an audience. When Jeff Durbin went on your program and called you a liar, it was very telling to me that the response from Matt Estes was, Jeff shouldn't do that because it's bad for the brand. Jeff shouldn't do that because it makes him look bad. It's like, that's what this is all about. It's not about don't disagree with a brother in Christ by calling him a liar, unless you have like evidence he's actually lying. If you got the goods and you're confronting somebody for lying, then that's great. But you don't go up and call someone a liar on their broadcast. You shouldn't do that because that's wrong. No, it's just bad for the brand. It just doesn't look good. It makes your arguments look weak. That's how they see this. And so that was fascinating for me to see.
Well, the other mode of operation, for those that don't know what MO means, the other mode of operation that I find disingenuous, whether completely deceptive or not, you could be the judge, but if nothing else, it's disingenuous, is when you hear something that your opponent theologically says, and you interpret that to mean something. Right. So I heard Leighton Flowers say this statement, and I know he believes that means X, Y, Z. That statement, whatever it was, he means X, Y, Z by that statement. Mm-hmm. And then I actually have a conversation with Leighton, a back and forth exchange with Leighton, and I find out, oh no, he didn't mean X, Y, Z. He actually meant A, B, C. And he explains what he meant by it. Even though the way he explained it sounded like to me he meant X, Y, Z, but I know now, based upon his explanation, he really meant A, B, C. But that doesn't help my narrative. It doesn't help my program of bashing Leighton or bashing his belief system if he doesn't believe X, Y, Z, because if he believes X, Y, Z, man, that's an easy straw man just to tear up and down. Yeah. And I can have all kinds of fun with that. And if he takes away that from me, then I can't have that fun program of mocking Leighton for believing X, Y, Z, even though I've been told and explained very clearly he actually believes ABC about what he said. And that is just disingenuous. If I find out that a person misspoke or said something that wasn't clear to me and that he explained it to me afterwards of what he meant by this statement, then I should take a brother in Christ at his word. And I should say, oh, okay, he said this. I thought he meant this, but I found out he actually meant this over here. And so when I critique him, if I'm going to critique him at all, it's going to be for what he actually meant, not for what I interpreted him saying over here. And that's been a big critique I've had against James White, because he does that not only against me, he's done that against several other brothers in Christ. where he will take them for meaning one thing when it's pretty clear that they meant something else, but he will continue to represent them as if they meant, for example, the whole thing with the interpretive methodology. Do you use the same interpretive exegetical methodology, hermeneutical methodology with Romans 9 as you do with the doctrine of the Trinity or other doctrines? And he plays that clip out of context where I say the word no, but he doesn't play the entire context to say that I was actually saying my 20-minute opener wasn't a representation of an exegetical work on Romans 9. I did the exegesis to prepare for my 20-minute presentation, which was highlighting our points of contention. That's what I explained in the debate, but he doesn't play that. He just plays the word no, and then just says, see, Leighton doesn't have the same hermeneutical principles across the board, which is just false. And he knows it's false, but yet his intro continues to play that narrative and continues to mock Sociology 101 Leighton Flowers as believing we don't believe in a consistent exegetical hermeneutical process for all theological perspectives.
And I pointed that out to him. I said, I get it. Rich doesn't have to take my word for it, but I said, like, you when Leighton wants you on the program, it's possible that he just wants to have a public conversation. It's possible that he's not trying to get. I can tell you from experience that Leighton doesn't care about that stuff. Like, that's all secondary. Whatever the numbers are on the YouTube or whatever the numbers are on these things, that's secondary to him. And it really, I can just tell you, I know this guy, and I can tell you that doesn't matter to him. And he's just like, well, I just don't think he's a person well acquainted with the truth. That is.
And he must have said that. He must have said that exact phrase to me 4 times in our conversation over 40 minutes. He said, Leighton, I'm straightforward. I'm honest. I just don't find you to be a person well acquainted with the truth. And to the point where I have to say, okay, Rich, brother, I hear what you're saying. I understand you think I'm dishonest. You think I'm duplicitous. And I'm trying to reach out to you here. I was very cordial with him. I wish you could hear the conversation. I would love for you to hear the conversation. Because I want you to see that I'm striving to hold out an olive branch here. I'm striving to meet them halfway, to say, can we not assume the worst about the other person here? Can we not assume a nefarious intention? And then he said, well, and the way he explained it, and I don't want to put words in his mouth because it was a private conversation, but at the same time, he wouldn't let me record it and put it public. So I have to tell you what I think, the way I had the conversation, what I reflect on it. But he said, well, Leighton, and he tried to seem to soften it a little bit. He said, well, Leighton, your hermeneutic itself is duplicitous. Your hermeneutic is dishonest. That's what he called it. It's a dishonest hermeneutic. And he said, maybe it's just what you've been taught. The people who've gone before you, that's just what you've been taught, this dishonest hermeneutic, which I don't even know what the dishonest hermeneutic
What
means.
does that even mean? Yeah.
I
like,
don't
hermeneutics
know,
aren't dishonest. Like, moral agents are dishonest.
Hermeneutic is a methodology.
Yeah, I don't know what that means.
So I said, well, why don't you and White call Dr. Brown or William Lane Craig dishonest then? Because they have the same hermeneutical approach to Romans 9 as I do, as far as I know. Well, they're different. That's different. And then he would go on, and he went on his story talking about how Michael Brown was on the program and repented for having T.G. Jakes on his program. And he said, see, Michael Brown's willing to own up to his mistakes. And I said, oh, so Michael Brown repented of his hermeneutical process with Romans 9? And he's, that's not the point. I mean, the point is Michael Brown's willing to examine himself. I said, I'm willing to examine myself. I've apologized 4 times on my program for different things. One of them with regard to AOMIN Ministries, where I even actually started the program with the song "I'm Sorry, So Sorry," because I'd played something out of context for Brian Abishano on the program, and I apologized for it. I said, I'm perfectly fine with apologizing for mistakes that I make. Are you? Is Dr. White? I mean,
even us having this conversation, us putting this broadcast out there is going to be proof positive that we're glory hounds in their mind. Oh, see, they call us up and then they get on a broadcast together and talk about our private conversation. Like, this is going to be proof in their mind that we're just out for the publicity. And what, again, it goes back to their perception of other people and their motives is rock solid. There is no reflecting on or questioning their perceptions of others. They are 100% convinced. And they made this, James White made this. And this was the fascinating part to me, because I didn't know this. And Rich told me this, that in the debate during your opening statement, James White makes the call that I see what Leighton's doing. He's smuggling in total inability, and I'm not going to play the game. And he didn't play. The debate stopped right there, basically.
So in his mind, so okay, let's play this out for a second. Drew, tell us if this is the way you see it. Okay, let's play this out. He hears me get up and do my opener. I talk about, okay, from verse 6, why aren't the Israelites, the chosen people of God, not believing in their own Messiahs? God's promise failed. That's the main issue. And I say they're not believing in their Messiah because they're being cut off in their unbelief, and they're being judicially blinded by God so as to engraft the Gentiles, so as to bring about the plan of redemption. That's my answer to it. And Calvinists, and on the other hand, they say that the reason they're not believing is because God doesn't really love them. God doesn't really want them. He didn't choose them. They're hardened because they're reprobates. They're not cut off because of unbelief. They're cut off before they're ever born. So they're cut off before they do anything bad, which would be unbelief. So they're reprobates.
So here's you say that
they read that. Okay.
Right.
So that's the two views. And so when he hears me confront that, what goes through his mind? Oh, he wants to debate total inability. And I'm not going to debate total inability. I want to debate Romans 9, not even seeing my connection that Romans 9 has everything to do with the presupposition you're bringing into this whole context that people are cut off for no apparent reason before they're born, versus being cut off for their unbelief and being hardened in their own rebellion and cut off in their own. That's just two very different ways of reading this text. And if you don't recognize or see that, I don't know how to make that more clear.
He makes that call. So he makes that call and then stops listening. He doesn't hear anything else you have to say on Romans 9. He doesn't hear how that connects to Romans 9. He doesn't respond to how it connects to Romans 9. As far as I can tell, he does not understand how that connects to Romans 9. I have not seen anything that he's put out that makes me think he understands that.
Right.
I mean, right, Drew? Right, Drew?
That's what I was going to say, is that I think that, and you had a little bit more charitable kind of reason for why this happened, but I think that in the cross-examination, the reason why he didn't respond is because he was like, I have no idea what Leighton just said. I don't understand it. His hermeneutical principle, this methodology, this, that, and the other.
He's not following my logic. He's not following. Right.
Well,
a lot of Calvinists don't follow provisionism at all for a while.
Right.
It takes a while for them to catch what we're saying with regard to judicial hardening and such.
Right. And here's the challenge to our Calvinistic brethren. And I've not seen this happen once yet. Sean Cole has come closest. There's like one other brother within the groups that's seeking to understand. But I would like to see Calvinists actually understand what our position is, why it is, be able to articulate it and respond. And I do not think that James White can do that. I don't think he has any idea what our position is. But beyond most Calvinists will say, well, you think it's about nations. Okay, tell me more. That's not enough. Tell me more about what you think it's about, And I think that's my challenge, and I think that's what's so frustrating, is it's difficult to get meaningful engagement on this when people are not willing to
below
understand.
The surface. Yeah, they don't go much below the surface of that comment. Right. You'll hear like Sati and Brudenkake say, "Oh, nations, that's just more individuals," and so as if that answers the corporate,
as though we think it's about God choosing a nation to be saved. Right. It's not like
they're not trying to. Some of them are not trying to understand our perspective enough to engage it. The biblical truth guy here, a Christ-centered perspective, is what he's calling himself. I think this is the same picture that's on the Twitter guy, the Kevin guy.
This guy is actually this guy is actually my personal troll. He's been trolling me for years. No, he's been trolling me for years.
All right, so he says total inability or total depravity is a topic debate. This is supposed to be each other's understanding of Romans 9. It was wrong to refute total depravity and equate it with judicial hardening. Okay, if you're not allowed to combat the presupposition that a person has coming into the exegetical commentary of a debate, then you are tying that person's hands behind their back. You can't assume true the presupposition that you're bringing to the discussion. So if a person comes into Romans 9 with a presupposition that God reprobates people before they're ever born, before they do anything bad like unbelief, then that is a presupposition that Calvinists have. And therefore, when they read Romans 9, they read it with that presupposition in mind. If, however, you believe, as the scripture says in chapter 11, verse 23, that they were cut off for their unbelief and that they're hardened, that they're being given a spirit of stupor, hardened, blinded in their rebellion because of their own choice to rebel, then that is distinctly different than the presupposition of total inability. Therefore, you come to a different conclusion depending upon the presupposition you walk into the text with. If you walk into the text with total inability as a presupposition, you will read Calvinism into the hardened Israelites. If you walk into the text with, I think, a biblical anthropology, that people have the freedom to either follow or reject the truth of God. And if they reject the truth of God and continually rebel against him and grow hardened and callous, that eventually he will not strive with men forever, that he will give you over to your lust and to your fleshly desires, and possibly, if it serves his purpose, even cut you off and blind you in that rebellion so as to bring his purpose through your rebellious action, like he's doing to the Israelite people. Even though he may do that, he may do it for even a redemptive good, so that they've stumbled but not beyond recovery. They may be provoked to envy and still saved. They may leave their unbelief and be grafted back in. So even the hardened individuals in Romans 9 through 11 aren't individuals who can't still be redeemed, according to Paul. And so that was made, those are all points that were made very clearly in the debate, at least as far as I can tell from listening back over it and preparing it. Those are the points I strive to make. Now, you can make the argument that I didn't do a very good job making those points. In my first theological debate, maybe I should have spent more time on this, that, or the other. Maybe I wasn't as clear as I could have been. All valid critiques. But to say that I did not engage at all within Romans 9, that all I did was talk about the topic of total depravity, that's just all I ever did, and I did nothing else, that is so absurdly ridiculous and demonstrably false that when you say things like that, it just makes us go, this is a troll. This is not a person that has a well-intended desire to engage with me in actual intellectual conversation. And persons like that, with all due respect to you, will be blocked, because I think we need to be engaging more with the Chris Dates of the world of Calvinism, or the others who I think show respect to us, even though we disagree with them, and are actually able to engage with some kind of level of intellectual honesty with regard to what we're saying and why we're saying it. And it's so rare to find that individual. I think it's because the squeaky wheel oftentimes gets the oil, and it's the trolls that have the squeakiest wheel. And that's unfortunate that sometimes that's the way that it is. But I just don't, and here he goes again, so I'm going to just do that right there. You're blocked, my friend. Just like James White does to the trolls on his site. I guess that's what you have to do in order to kind of bring it down, narrow it down to the people who need to be focused on, that are actually going to treat you with some kind of level of intellectual honesty.
And I hope Kevin is doing better in his life, and I do hope that he's. I don't think the sociological controversies are healthy for his soul, and so I do hope that he gets better, or is better. I haven't engaged with him in years, so hopefully things have improved since the last time.
Well, and sometimes these kinds of discussions and debates can become an escape for other issues that one's dealing with. And oftentimes, as we know, anytime there's controversy, hurt people hurt other people. And you add a controversial, very intimate topic like sociology into the mix, then all of a sudden I have a place in which I'm engaging with a passion topic, but I'm also engaging with people who I disagree with. And now I have the opportunity and format to really give it to them, really have my chance to have my say with this guy. And oftentimes it doesn't come with the best fruits of the spirit. And all of us can fall into that. I think all of us can mistakenly react in the flesh towards people who disagree with us, especially easy over the internet when you don't see face and you don't know an individual personally. And that's something I think we've got to be more careful about. We've got to strive to engage people with some level of respect and love. And
it gets difficult, and I'm not going to pretend that I'm above, some of this stuff being, I have to take 5 minutes before I respond to someone, or I've got to step away for an entire day. and not engage with it. And some of this stuff is difficult. So, definitely not above this, but it's amazing to me, the inability to self-reflect or second guess yourself, or think that maybe you might just have somebody wrong, that maybe just maybe when Leighton Flowers had that text message with Emilio Ramos, he thought it meant one thing, and maybe you think he's wrong, maybe you think his debate preparation is naive, and you got to follow the rules. Okay, fine, but he had that text message exchange, he was engaging with you in what the debate was. To not have that, maybe this is how Leighton saw it, and not be able to step one toe in that direction is just amazing to me.
Yeah. And yeah, that's unfortunate. Somebody's asking, that's the first time I've ever seen Leighton block someone. Why haven't you blocked Brenton? Well, Brenton, one, puts his real name up. Two, he asks, I think, intellectually honest questions. I don't think he's overly contentious with me, at least not in the back and forth that I've engaged with him on. I do think Brenton is inconsistent, and I told him so, but he continues to post and to make his views known. But I don't, please don't hear me, I don't mind Calvinists posting on our sites and our chats. Yeah. I encourage that, but
that's the point.
I encourage, I mean, that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to, we used to be Calvinist. I used to be a Calvinist. I want to engage with Calvinists on this topic. I just want to do so in a healthy way and with good intentions. And if somebody's not going to put their real name on there and is going to continue to just, state blatant lies over and over again, or very contentious comments, like some of the people that I've had to block, unfortunately, on the program have done, then that's just for the benefit of really the rest of you, because I know whenever I go listen to, Mike Winger, for example, and there's some atheist on there just cussing people out and they get blocked real quickly. I'm thankful for that. I don't want to wade through that stuff when I listen to other, some of my favorite programs. So I try as much as we can, try to block people who are going to dissuade from good, honest conversation. And so I think that's important. So Eric, we lost Drew. You drove him away, I guess.
I did. That's what I do.
You offend people and just make them mad enough that they just want to leave. And that's how you're supposed to treat brothers in Christ, I guess, right?
Well, I mean, and you and I called, I am interested in hearing what their perspective was. And he offered, for us to have a conversation, and I wanted to give him a call. And I hoped that you would be able to talk to him too. And I'm glad that happened. I guess it was more fruitful than I expected, because I really did gain a lot of knowledge about what their perspective is and how they see things as a professional debate organization, which is, I think, how they see themselves. Engaged in contests. I used the word battle, and he didn't like that, but they are engaged in contests with other Christians. And it's interesting how they go about that. I don't think it's a healthy biblical way to engage how they do with other Christians. It seems to me they're more fair-minded and cordial with non-Christians. But then when it comes to Catholics and other non-Reformed Protestants, it's like, why is it like that? But it was, I gave him a call. We had a good conversation, and I gained a lot of perspective on where they're coming from.
Yeah. I hear you. Well, I think we probably need to bring things to a close. It looks like Drew's trying to log back in, but his system is kind of lagging there. Well, Derek is asking another question. He said, would you say most rank and file provisionists understand the system well? One of my issues is that there are various views of God under the same umbrella, and that creates a variance. Well, same is true of Calvinism for sure. Do most rank and file Calvinists understand Calvinism well? No. and it's not a monolithic group, and there's a lot of people who have differing views. So I think that's probably a frustration that everyone has with regard to dealing with another systematic or a particular area of belief. But there also are variances within systems that are recognized among the groups. I mean, I recognize that some people differ with me with regard to eternal security and how eternal security plays itself out, or the knowledge of God issues, how infinite knowledge works within time and space and our choices and decisions. And there are different theories on how that works. And I disagree with some of the theories of other self-professing provisionists. But
yeah, Drew and I are engaged in a public Facebook dialogue right now over open theism, where we're kind of going back and forth and I'm going like, what? I don't get that, and that's just what we do. And you can do that. You can do that. I run a podcast with the guy. Like, you can do that and still, be united on the stuff you agree on, and consider it completely secondary to your friendship, to cordiality, to a working relationship. Like,
Yeah. Derek, who often comments here and has very intelligent things to say from my recollection, he says, Leighton, Eric, I'm a provisionist in the Sociology 101 Facebook group, and many are pretty vicious against even honest Calvinists. Should that be addressed in the group? Yes. At the top of the page, right at the top, it talks about how we are to be kind, and that the fruit of the Spirit is necessary in our discussions, and how we're to treat others. I don't know, and I have, like, how many moderators are there in that group, Eric? You may know better than I do.
No.
I mean, I don't know what else to do. I can't police the internet all the time.
The internet's a rough place, man. It's a rough place.
And sometimes you got to say, put on your big boy pants. There's going to be people who are going to, and don't read negative tone into what you hear. Sometimes I'll find myself, I read back over, a exchange, and in my mind, I'm thinking, kind of happily just answering questions, and I'm not upset at all. I'm not angry at all. I'm just giving a quick little response, usually in a passing moment that I have a minute to type. And then I read back over it and I go, man, that does sound like I'm really short and like I'm being angry, because you can read tone into comments. And so sometimes things come across a lot more in an angry tone. My wife is the worst about this. She'll, and I'm tattling on my wife here, and I says, oh, no good to do on Facebook. But my wife will do this sometimes, where she'll get a text from somebody, or whatever. She'll go, look what they said. They said, bye. And she'll just read this negative tone, and I'll just say, well, let me read it. And then I'll read it in this really upbeat, like a happy lint in my voice tone. And she goes, oh, you think I'm reading maybe more into it than I said, yeah, I don't know that's necessarily I don't think she was meaning to be that way. It's just, so you can read a really negative tone into a statement that wasn't meant that way. And other times, you're right, Derek, they're probably just people being mean, and being a little bit nasty. And I try to stop it. I honestly do. I can't.
We see every, us moderators see every single report.
Yeah. And so, you can report the unnecessarily mean comments and
report them, and so we can get them out of there.
Yeah. And I keep reminding people that my goal is to win people over with good, sound arguments and mercy and love, because that's what won me over. So I want to do the things that actually work. If you just shout somebody down as a heretic, just be strong. I've had that comment 2 or 3 times.
I saw that comment in here too. Like, it's so
be a man, be a man kind of comments, just call it out for what it is. It's a heresy fest, just do the heresy fest thing. And y'all saw what Matt Slick sounded like when he said that.
Oh my goodness.
This is a heresy fest, blah, blah, blah. How did that go over with you when Matt Slick over and over again just called Warren a heretic? What is everybody thinking? Even James White said, that's not helpful. Even if you believe he's a heretic, it's not helpful during the middle of debate just to keep calling him a heretic. It doesn't do anything. It's just wasted words, and you're hardening the person in their unbelief. You're hardening the person in their doctrinal false teaching. You're not helping by calling them out and saying, okay, you can say the same thing in a nice way. You can say the same thing. I believe your doctrine is wrong. I believe your interpretation is an error and can lead to many disastrous effects, which I say all the time on my program. I believe Calvinism is a false teaching. I believe it's a false interpretation, and it can have disastrous effects on lost people as well as even Christians. And I think it needs to be confronted. But I think it can be confronted in love and with respect to the people who hold to it. I don't think that's too difficult to ask for. I don't think that's too much to ask for. And if you don't think I'm being manly enough by just yelling and screaming and calling it, go start your own freaking page and yell at them all day long and see how far you get. See how much good you do for the kingdom. And let me do what God's called me to do. Sorry, got on my soapbox there a little bit, Eric.
Well, I just to support that point, how many YouTube subscribers do you have?
I don't know. I have no
40,000? Do you have 40,000?
I guess so. If you tell me that, I gotta go look.
I think so.
I haven't looked in a while.
I think so. So just, it
was like
all right.
30,
Just saying. Just saying.
Okay. Well, Mano Jose, thank you for your super chat. He says, "Hey, Dr. Layton, does the Calvinist saying that, quote, God did not have to save anyone unbiblically or contrary to God's merciful and eternal attribute?" Well, we agree that God didn't have to save anyone. That's when a Calvinist rebukes us with something that we believe, it's not a rebuke. Okay. When a Calvinist says something we agree with, as if it's rebuking us, then that proves they don't understand us, because they're saying something as if we don't agree with it. So when a Calvinist says, God didn't have to save anyone, as if I disagree with that, then it's showing they don't understand what we believe. The fact that God chooses to provide salvation for all people when he didn't have to provide salvation for anyone is what's so demonstrably gracious and merciful, is that he bound all men over to disobedience. Why? So that he have mercy on them all. He didn't have to have mercy on any, but the fact that he has mercy on all shows him as a maximally glorious God that's willing to show mercy to every single person who believes and trusts in him. And so I think what Calvinists try to do is to reverse the issue whenever we're trying to bring a critique about this concept and idea of God, kind of this arbitrary unilateral pick of some people and not others. And they're trying to say, well, you think God's unjust to pass by people. Well, on Calvinism, he would be unjust to pass by people, because on Calvinism, at least the version of Calvinism that John Calvin taught and John Piper teach, they are bad because God decreed for them to be bad from birth and they couldn't do otherwise. So yeah, on that particular viewpoint, I do think that's unjust. But that doesn't mean I believe God's unjust, because I don't believe God does that for people. I think God actually allows for people to have choice and real responsibility, able to respond to the light and revelation that's brought to all men sufficiently for them to be able to respond and get more light, more revelation. So yeah, do I think Calvinism is unjust, or Calvinism represents a perspective that makes God appear to be unjust? Absolutely. And the reason is because of their affirmation of total inability and the need for irresistible grace in order to believe the gospel. In other words, God has to effectually or kind of supernaturally give people the gift of faith to believe. Otherwise, they're born unable to believe, which gives them a really good excuse for not believing, in my estimation. And the only ones who's going to give that irresistible grace to are those he's chosen unilaterally before they're ever born for reasons he never tells us. I just don't think that's the Bible. I think that's Calvinism. That's not Scripture. Anyway, that was soapbox. Got on that one. You want to comment on that at all?
I think it's just whenever they bring that up, it's a like segue into a accusation of self-idolatry. Well, you're just you're concerned about man's fairness and your humanistic ideas of what is fair, and that's kind of what that leads into most of the time.
Yeah, I think you're right. And it's kind of like the meme that meme somebody created from a statement I said. I guess I said somewhere. I don't remember half the things I say. You talk so much on video, you forget all the things you say, and then people capture memes sometimes in a good light and sometimes in a bad. But something to the effect of, Calvinists have convinced the world that we should be shocked that God would even show mercy to one, unworthy sinner. And I say, well, and the truth of the matter is, we should be shocked that God would refuse to show mercy to even one unworthy sinner based upon the revelation we find in Christ, because he died for all, because he was willing to give his life for everybody. So we shouldn't be shocked that a merciful, loving God, it's like saying if if okay, it would be like saying when Eric stops and helps a homeless person, okay, and I see you stop and help a homeless person, or you're helping somebody in need, and you witness to them, and you said we should be shocked that Eric would even stop and help one homeless person. I'd be like, that's insulting. No, I shouldn't be shocked that Eric. I shouldn't be shocked that Eric stops and helps and witnesses to a homeless person. I should see him do that and think to myself, I bet you he does that with everybody he has a chance to, because he's an honorable man that likes to help people. You know what I'm saying? That would be the positive side of it. But Calvinists, it seems like they want to make us try to kind of reverse the order and think that we should be shocked that God would even show mercy to one person. That should like baffle us or shock us in some way.
And I know that one of the great gifts that seminary gave me. Yeah. One of the great gifts that seminary gave me was forcing me to read the Old Testament and forcing me to study Hebrew and study the Old Testament. And one of the amazing things that came out of that was you don't even need to go to Christ. You can go to a major theme in the Old Testament, which is seen everywhere, which is that God is lovingly kind, that he is dependable, that you can depend on what he says because he's lovingly kind, and you can depend on him not to just crush you because he is lovingly kind. This idea that the Old Testament God was going around smiting everyone, and then in Jesus he became all nice, is not the Bible. From the very beginning, the Hebrews worshiped God for his loving kindness, his chesed, and it's one of the.
Hey, what's your language?
I know. Sorry, I cursed there for a second. But you do a word study on chesed, and it's all over the place. You could spend your entire academic career on that word. And God is lovingly kind. He always has been.
Yeah, good word. Well, Drew, even after all the bad things Eric said about you, you still came back. That's amazing. Oh, we can't hear you.
Oh, now muted.
Haha, wait. Is that?
There
can
it
you
is.
hear me?
Now I can see.
Okay,
Yeah,
cool.
I can hear you now.
Okay, cool. Okay.
Yeah, I hear you now. Well,
while
you were off, did you build up everything that you wanted to say and get on a soapbox before we finished off here?
I mean, I could
Eric
resume
and I
what
just
I was saying.
turn off our video and leave. You go ahead and take this. Go ahead.
Yeah. I think, well, maybe this seems a little off topic now. I've caught the last few minutes what you guys are talking about, but I was basically just saying the whole that you didn't debate Romans 9 thing is a tactic that could be used for almost anything. Like if you were to debate the Trinity, right? And then let's say you win, and then the other person, exegetically walks through a particular passage or whatever else, then you could say they didn't exegete this passage because, they came to a wrong conclusion or whatever, so it doesn't matter whether it's exegetical, whether it's that you're talking about Romans 9 or whatever else. I had this formulated the first time I was going to say it, but maybe I'm just going to, okay, see you guys later.
Well, I think I see what you're saying. That you can say someone
you're kind of freezing up too.
Yeah.
So
I think I see what you're saying. That like if you disagree, you can just form your disagreement by saying he didn't exegete the passage, and the implied is correctly, right? And you can just say he doesn't exegete the passage,
which is just a form of question begging, because you're debating who has exegeted the passage correctly. Now, I conceded that my opener was not a exegesis of Romans 9 because I didn't want to spend my entire time benignly going through and reading text that we all agree with and just saying some statements about it. I wanted to focus the short amount of precious time that I had on our actual points of contention. I wanted to hit on this presupposition, this issue of the interlocutor and who the interlocutor is, which is all about what Romans 9 is. There's huge amounts of work on the interlocutor. How many Calvinists have you heard just assume that anybody who's questioning Calvinism is questioning God because of what Romans 9 says? Who are you, O man, to talk back to God? If the interlocutor is questioning reprobation, then Calvinists have won the debate. How much time did I spend in my opener talking about the interlocutor and referencing back to Romans 3 and the interlocutor being a Jew who's been hardened and calloused in his rebellion? That is a key point to the debate. Did James White even touch on that? Did he doesn't
because he doesn't understand it. He doesn't understand.
I don't think so.
Straight up.
I don't think he does. I don't think he saw it as a point that's worth. I don't think he understood the point we were trying to make in a sufficient enough time for him to engage with an in-depth conversation about it. He might be able to do so now if he'd been listening back through some of these things, maybe. But if you heard his discussion, even with John Craneman, there were several things that he said in that discussion that made me go, he doesn't get it still. It's going right past him.
And I wanted to say,
based upon what I've seen,
one of the frustrating things about the interlocutor, if I may chime in here, is when we're talking about this stuff in the interwebs, because this is where we engage a lot with this stuff, and we say something like against Calvinism, then they quote this interlocutor as though it's against us, as though he's addressing cynicism, right? And it's so frustrating because then you have to how do I begin? Now we need to go through an entire conversation about what Romans 9 means and what it doesn't mean. And they just have this one-liner that they can just drop and be like, see ya,
Yeah.
And it's so incredibly frustrating because it is question begging, but they don't see it that way. And they're like, well, this has already been addressed. Paul addressed this issue in Romans 9, and they quote it. And it's like, oh, whoa, because I've never heard that verse before and I don't know what to do with that, it's just so frustrating because they can just throw this one line in there, assuming that it's what they think it means, because our view is less well known, admittedly, than the Calvinist view. And then,
and to help a Calvinist know what that feels like, to help you know what that feels like, think about how you feel every time somebody quotes John 3:16 and drops the mic and leaves the room. Okay,
right.
Think about how that makes you feel. Because that's what I got when I first became a Calvinist back in the 90s when Calvinism wasn't cool yet. That was
we all know you weren't
a
real Calvinist, Leighton. Come on.
Oh, okay. Well, besides that, I would get that all the time, and you would have this Calvinistic fervor, and so somebody would quote John 3:16 as if you hadn't ever heard it before, despite the fact that I memorized this thing when I was 2. And quoted at you with this condescending look of, don't you know the Bible says, for God so loved the world, Leighton, world, that kind of look at you. And you're just going, oh, Calvinist, that's the way we feel when you.
We're going to be clipping that.
Yeah, that's Caleb. Come on, let's go.
When you say things like, don't you know that John 6:44 says, don't you know that Romans 9 says, who are you, oh man, to question God? And then you drop your mic.
Did you just quote the Bible at me? I don't know what.
And it's funny because
that's when this shirt comes in right here.
Yeah.
It's enough.
Yeah.
Dr. Pritchett's does that sanctimonious blather.
It's funny when they do that too. We had that interview with Sean Cole, and what did he say? He asked us a question about what would you go to, or somebody at some point asked us, what passage would you go to disprove Calvinism or something like that? And I was like, Ephesians 1 and Romans 9. That. Let's go there. That's the whole point. Is let's talk about it. It's not as though I've not seen this passage and I want to avoid it. I want to talk about it because it completely undermines your whole system. But anyways.
Well, and that's one of the things that a lot of former Calvinists will talk about is one of the reasons that they probably stayed in Calvinism so long is that so few people who confronted them with the actual text that they were dealing with. They would run off to another text as they're combating the views of Calvinism, or they would come up with some philosophical quandary, like, well, why should we evangelize if everything's faded? These kinds of things. Versus, okay, I understand you believe Romans 9 is saying this, this, and this, but could it be instead that Romans 9 is actually saying this, this, and this, and actually taking them through and explaining that to them? I think that's why I think the next generation of Christians you'll see far and fewer less Calvinist. Again, it'll die back out, I think, because more and more people will begin to understand where Calvinism falls short and understand how to defend themselves against it, to the point where, like has happened 5 or 6 other times in 500 years, Calvinism will just take a nosedive back down again because it won't have a leg to stand on.
Yeah, and that's I was heading towards Calvinism as a man in my early 20s, and what
you were
got
never in your early 20s. we all know if you're not in your early 20s now, then you couldn't have been in your early 20s then.
I'm like almost 40. All right. So I was going there, and then somebody sat me down and goes, "Oh yeah, so Ephesians 1, what do you think it says? Let's go through Ephesians 1." And like went through Ephesians 1, and I was like, "Oh.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know what I believe now. Thanks.
Yeah.
But Reformed theology is out, Yeah.
And with respect to our Calvinistic brethren, I think that Reformed theology is often, not always, but born out of ignorance. What did he say? Go with fist bump and laugh. Others do it too.
Yeah.
Keep it up for all of us. Yeah.
Thanks, Mike.
It's born out of ignorance in the sense that when you're confronted with Romans 9 and Ephesians 1, people just go, "Oh, I don't know what that, with John 3:16, this, that, or the other," like, and then they just keep getting hit with that over and over and over again. And instead of finding an answer to it, they're just like, "Well, this is just what it says," But yeah.
Yeah, going to the actual text is an important thing. We're talking about the disagreeing with other believers, especially on this particular topic, is engaging with them in the context of the text they are struggling with or they are using, instead of just quoting another text out of context, right. or the volleying of proof text.
Proof text battle, yeah.
Yeah, each text, it has its context. Let's understand it within its context. Let's understand what's happening in the city that's being this letter is being sent to. Let's understand who's sending this letter and why he's sending this letter.
Yeah, and because if you're not doing that, then what are you saying about the Bible?
That's contradictory.
Right. We just got to live in tension. It's in tension. Yeah. You just got to understand that the two railroads, they meet in eternity. It seems like parallel now, but really they're not.
Yeah, and that right there is one of the reasons Calvinism has grown so much, is because a lot of non-Calvinists, so to speak, take that line of approach.
Yep.
And they just take the approach of, let's just all get along. There's no disagreement here. Let's not pretend that there's a disagreement. Let's pretend like there's not a disagreement between us and just say there's a tension. Yes, Calvinism is true. Yes, Arminianism is true. Both of them are true. Two rails that meet in eternity kinds of nonsense. And let's all just get along. That kind of mentality is what causes Calvinism to rise. And it'll be the exact same logical way of thinking that way that will lead to a hyper form of Calvinism among Calvinists. Because if you're logically consistent within your Calvinism, it will lead to a more hyper form of the systematic. And that's when it eats itself and it ends up dying back out. At least that's what it's done over the last 400 years. But nevertheless, we've come to almost 2-hour mark, and that's not very long for us, but it's long enough for us to call it quits. Plus, I'm hungry. I want to go eat dinner. What time is it for you, Drew?
12:45.
Oh man,
in the future. It's Tuesday here.
Tomorrow. It's tomorrow at noon.
You're in the future?
Yeah.
Time travel.
No. That's why you're an open theist guy.
Oh, I get it now.
I know the truth before you guys do.
Yeah, you like to live in the future. No wonder.
I get it now.
It
all makes so much sense.
Dynamic omniscience means I live a day before all of you.
I'm just so above it all. I just get to experience everything before anyone else does, so I can just see it all coming.
So that's what I do. I get up in the morning and I text Drew and I'm like, "Hey, how'd tomorrow go?" And he just lets me know. Yeah,
so what am I going to do tomorrow, Drew? Do you know? Can you look up online real quick? Look up online.
Should I get out of bed this morning, or should I just stay in bed? How'd it go this day?
Hey, Caleb says a nice poster, Drew.
Yeah, wait, this side. My wife said they always tell us the truth, right? And she said that in a smaller window like this, it's distracting because you can't see what it says. And it's like, oh, what's that? And stuff like that. But then if I'm in a bigger window, then you can actually read it and it's better. And so
get behind me, Satan. Get behind me, Satan. Get behind me, Satan. I don't want to hear that.
Yeah,
and I'm like, no, it's my set.
The people who watch this program, though, and your program,
I would like to think so.
Y'all should watch Provisionist Perspective if you're not watching it.
We're approaching 1,000 subs. We've got like 830 right now. Give us, come on.
Oh, well, hey,
we're almost at 1,000. Come on.
Everybody who's watching, go subscribe to Provisionist Perspective and put them over 1,000.
1,000.
That way they can sell. Y'all can sell cool merch then, couldn't you? After 1,000, can't you sell?
Power level 1,000.
We'll be able to do super chats.
There you
We'll
go.
be able to do super chats, and we'll be able to do the community feature. But Warren McGrew just found out that it's not 1,000 subs that you can do merch on YouTube. It's 10,000. But I mean, if you guys want to give us 10,000 subs, I mean, it's just throw them our way. It's not. We're not gonna object to that. So,
well, it everything comes in time. I guess it just takes a while. It doesn't seem like that long ago that I remember getting to the 1,000 mark, because I remember thinking that exact same stuff. It doesn't seem like long ago. It wasn't that long ago. I mean, I started this thing in 2014. That's so weird. When you think about time stuff, we're talking about time. We were talking about that the other day, and I was remember, when I was a kid in the 90s when I graduated from high school, and somebody would talk about like 1981 or 82, and I was thinking that's so long ago. 1981, 82, when it was 92 or 93. I was like 81, 82. That was so long ago. And now when people bring up like 2011 or 2009 or whatever, I said, well, that was just a couple of years ago, right? It's like nothing. Like, it's
10 years ago. Yeah.
No, it's I don't realize that I'm in 2020 now.
Yeah.
What are the hovering cars? It's just
Aaron
weird.
Anson has a good point. Where's the links for Provisionist Perspective?
Oh,
links,
well, I don't
they'll
think
go
so.
in the. You just go.
Y'all are just glory hogs.
Get on the Google machine.
You guys are trolling for followers. That's all your motivation.
Take a minute, Leighton blocks us.
You guys don't even care about God's provision for all. You just want followers.
We're just in it for the glory. It's all about it.
We're PR hogs, man. What can we do? It's who we are.
Well, why don't you put Provisionist Perspective in the side chat over there? Your link to y'all's right there.
I can't. You just go youtube.com/c/the Provisionist Perspective, and it'll bring us up.
Way too much. I can't type all that.
See, no one's doing that, Drew. You just got to link it.
We had provisionistperspective.com, but the
Eric,
free trial
like
thing lapsed and it doesn't work.
Aren't you like an admin on my YouTube page, Eric? I mean,
I am. That's true.
Okay.
How much power do I have?
You could put a link in every one of the podcasts if you want.
I'm just gonna go.
I feel an April Fool's joke coming next year now, Eric. You have an
which one of you that was the one that changed the Facebook page to Cabbage Patch Kids or whatever that was?
This guy.
Oh man, I'll never live that one down.
This guy did that. It was
so we immediately revoked all of his privileges for editing purposes.
It was so bad. We were like, oh no.
He thought he could just change the name of the Facebook group and it would just change it back the next day. But he found out the hard way that Facebook has a policy that you can't change the name for a month, over a month or something like that.
Yeah. It was like 30 or 40 days or something crazy. Yeah.
Yeah. So like 40 days.
The flowers patch.
The flowers patch.
I had to do the walk of shame. Dr. Flowers, I'm really sorry about this, but
and it was funny too, because speaking of the time change, we're like rambling on now and stuff, right? But I could change it when you all were sleeping so that you woke up on April Fool's Day and it was like the flowers patch, like, oh, what's this going on?
That's right. That's why you were able to get past some people for your April Fool stuff.
Yeah,
because you could post it the day before we were on April 4th.
I posted that one at 12:01 a.m.
He had me
on my April Fool's Day.
Well, why is it that his April Fool's post was like the only post that made any rational sense?
I mean, he made so much sense in his April Fool's.
It was like he was actually making sense.
I was like, yeah.
We'll do an episode where I rebut my own April Fool's joke. How about that?
Fun stuff. Well, thank you guys for tuning in. Thank you guys for supporting not only Sociology 101 but the Provisionist Perspective. Go tune in and listen to Eric and Drew and give them some more subscribers. Show them some love. Buy some merch, all that fun stuff. So
if you made it this far,
that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, only the theology geeks make it this far. You go into
these are the
programs.
These are the choice meats that made it.
That's right. That's the choice. The choice geek heretic meats.
Oh yes,
Heretic.
Somebody meme that.
We need to do a T-shirt. I'm a choice meat or something. You know, we need to.
I would buy that. I've already bought one T-shirt from 101.
You did.
I bought the Jeremiah 19:5 with the Calvin like.
Oh. That's a pretty good one.
And I have another one from the Babylon Bee that says "Joy to the elect." It's a Christmas shirt.
Oh, out of Luke, what is that? Luke 2, where it talks about taking the good news to all peoples.
Well, it's joy, like joy to the world, the Lord has come. It's like joy to the elect because it's for them.
Gotcha. Choice slab. There's a.
I think somebody just called us slabs of meat.
Slabs.
Yeah, there you go, right there.
I'm
Choice slabs
insulted.
of meat.
I'm insulted.
That's for overweight provisionists.
Yeah. Slab. I mean, I had steaks last night.
I'm a choice cold cut.
Andrew's gotten some good ones. Thy two wills be done.
That's pretty good.
There should be a star underneath it that says, "But really the decorative one." Like, only that one.
Oh, that's pretty good.
All right,
Caleb, are you taking notes?
We gotta bring this to an end before we do something that we regret. All right, it's been fun hanging out with you too.
When we get to 1,000, when we get to the 1,000 subscribers, we just need to do this for an hour, and there's no topic, and we just do this.
Oh wait, hey, can we do something like? Can we do something like if we get you to 1,000 subscribers, you'll both shave your head or something like that?
What?
Come on,
Why
don't y'all love
do
Jesus?
that?
Come on, don't you love Jesus?
If
you love Jesus, you would shave your head.
If we get to 1,000 subscribers, we'll invite Derek and Luke onto your show. We'll send them over from the providential perspective. Remember the Derek and Luke?
Yes.
I forgot about that. That's something we wanted to do. We need to plan that.
Yeah, we got to do that.
Yeah.
We'll give those guys a call.
And y'all got to keep the straight face like y'all did in that show, because that's what made that show so awesome. Is that y'all never.
What do you mean by straight face? I don't know. We invited. I don't know.
I mean, they're pretty serious. They're pretty serious.
They're pretty serious guys.
Derek and who? What was the last other guy's name?
Derek and Luke.
Luke. That's right.
Yeah, they're pretty serious guys.
Yeah, Derek and Luke kept a very straight face the whole time.
I mean, they're
when
pretty
they were
serious.
explaining their theology.
So serious.
Yeah,
they need to lighten up a little bit next time, maybe.
No, I forgot about that. We need to. You don't want to hurt their feelings. All right. See y'all next time. Bye. Have a good one.